Welcome to Friday. It's the 10th day of November, 2023. Your Day Weather Podcast being brought to you by Cowboy State Daily, Wyoming's only daily newspaper. Check them out at cowboystatedaily.com. As we head into the weekend and as we look ahead for a while, it's going to be pretty mild with windy periods, but folks, there's really not much else going on in the region. If you want to get some leaves raked, maybe hang some Christmas lights, hey, good weekend to do that. We don't have any really big concerns for travel, so we're looking at overall good weather, high school football, whatever you want to do. The weather really isn't going to get in the way as west to east jet stream flow will flood most of the nation, most of the western United States, with mild Pacific air. We're cut off from Canada for a bit, so we're looking at some pretty nice weather. Yeah, it'll be windy as we've been discussing. The wind is going to be affecting the northern areas. It's going to be quite windy up into the northern Rockies, especially Montana, parts of Wyoming. Nothing crazy, though, just kind of a nuisance wind. Precipitation chances, they're going to be very low. Throughout most of the Intermountain West, the far Pacific Northwest, far southern New Mexico, parts of Texas, we'll see some rain, but most of the action is going to be well to the north or well to our south. Now, as we get to the end of the week, as we've been showing you, we're going to have a West Coast storm system come in. Now, over the last couple of days, there starts to be, on the modeling, the long-range modeling, there's starting to be some disagreements on the evolution of all of the weather mid to late next week. But we are expecting low pressure to be somewhere along the West Coast, from Washington State through California. That arrives mid to late next week, bringing those areas cooler and wet weather. But for the high plains, most of the Intermountain West, it may be a full week of this mild, breezy weather and really not a lot going on. Now, a week from today through the end of November still looks like a colder, unsettled weather pattern in the West will come on in. So kind of a reversal of where we are now. However, if you're a weather watcher and you want some weather, we've got to be patient. Beautiful shot here from Patrice Sutter in Colorado Springs. That system that came through earlier in the week went right down the front range of Colorado and brought some beautiful shots of fresh snow on Pikes Peak there. And we're going to see blue sky, some lenticular clouds and high pressure this weekend, so more pretty sights coming our way. The satellite imagery this morning shows that low reached its peak up there in Alaska and is kind of spinning on its heels, weakening a bit. Here are those strong jet stream winds coming in. So right along the coast of British Columbia and Washington and Northwest Oregon, there will be some showers. But as you can see, we just have high and mid-level clouds heading towards us. And you can see the lenticular clouds forming, those wave clouds. Lenticular clouds are forming and coming our way. So we'll see high and mid-level lenticular clouds coming through, but really that's about it. We have this low pressure near the Four Corners area helping to draw moisture up into here. But generally speaking, this is the dominant flow going through today. Strong jet stream winds will penetrate the Pacific Northwest going across Montana. So these winds are coming perpendicular to the divide. So where you see the blue to the green to the brighter colors here, that's where the strongest winds aloft are going to be, and that will translate to gusty winds on the surface. So you can see the highest winds are on this axis right along the divide this weekend. So this area right here and across North Dakota will be the windiest. Not as much wind as you get along I-70 and point south from there. But more of a nuisance wind, except up here in Montana, the winds are going to be a lot stronger. You can see the mild Pacific air coming in. This is the 5-day temperature anomaly. Nothing cold, nothing too warm, but a good 5, 6, 7 degrees above average. That's pretty comfortable November temperature regime here for the next 5 days. Over the next 5 days, here's your precipitation. The far Pacific Northwest, where those jet stream winds are driving that moisture in. That moisture down here in the south, New Mexico, Texas, along the Gulf Coast will be wet, but zip, zero, almost nothing in between these systems. And you can see how wet it's going to be here along the Gulf Coast as this El Nino-induced southerly jet stream really helping dump moisture into those areas. But the rest of the nation, very quiet weather. Now, as we get into Wednesday of next week, we have this low pressure system come down the coast and then hang off the west coast. What is a new situation evolving in the models now is to have this low get cut off from the main jet stream here and kind of spin off the California coast for 2 or 3 days. But it could also be brought inland as well at the same time. So a lot of question marks in the long term. But the bottom line is, for quite a while, at least 5 days or so, this low is still going to be off the west coast coming on in. But as it pushes more east, it's going to be pushing west to east, cooler, cloudier weather, and an increasing chance of gradient of showers west to east from the California coast through the Great Basin, the desert southwest, and into the central Rockies sometime by next weekend. That, in the meantime, though, southwest flow ahead of that low will flood mild Pacific air and a little bit of desert air into the region, so it's going to be very mild. Temperatures from this weekend well into next week will be pretty comfortable, a large part of the western United States. The colder anomalies will be along the west coast with that low. Now, this is by next weekend, so this is by the 19th. You can see it's disorganized, but we have a broad area of low pressure coming on in. Now, this may end up being a more organized system. There's a lot of disagreement at this time frame for next weekend, so we'll just have to wait to see. But the trend will change for sure by next weekend. And if we look at the Eastern Pacific Oscillation, kind of looks like a yo-yo. Okay, so here we are now, strongly positive right now. This is what will be bringing in the milder Pacific air through the weekend into early next week. Then we see the EPO go into this negative phase as the storm comes off the west coast and into the area next week. There's a brief spike up, and then look at going strongly negative again Thanksgiving week. So a little bit of a roller coaster, warm, cold, a brief warm up, and then that last week of November, Thanksgiving week, we've got this strongly negative phase returning. So this is why we're still looking at the second half of November being a different story. Have yourself a good Friday and a good weekend. We'll see you Monday.